Hi, welcome to the Catholic Corner. I'm Monsignor Walter Nolan. My guest today is the pilot who flew His Holiness Pope Francis in Shepherd 1 during his visit to the United States. Wow, isn't that neat? Captain Tom Murray is currently a captain and instructor pilot on the Boeing 777 in New York for American Airlines. Tom was also a captain in the United States Air Force. He flew C-141s worldwide. He was decorated as a Desert Storm veteran. Tom also holds a degree in aviation technology from Purdue University, graduated in 1982. Tom and his family are parishioners at St. Paul's in Princeton. Tom and his wife Donna, marvelous couple, marvelous family. They volunteer and support many local groups such as Mount Carmel Guild and Senior Care Ministry. They're very active in St. Paul's Parish. The school community and Notre Dame High School is very dear to their hearts. Today, Captain Tom's going to share with us about his experience as second in command in the plane carrying Holy Father, Pope Francis. Captain Tom, welcome. Welcome to the Catholic Corner.
Thank you, Monsignor. It's nice to be here with you.
So great to have you. Tell me, if you don't mind, could you just go back a little bit. When did you get interested in flying planes? Were you like a little kid, and you became a pilot?
Yeah, actually, when I was quite young, my dad, he was an aero engineer for Grumman Corporation. He worked on the F-14 and the lunar module that landed on the moon.
Oh, wow.
They sent me off to camp one summer and probably did something you probably couldn't even do today. And the director of the camp sent us flying a couple times that summer. My sister was in the back, I remember, and I was up front with the pilot. And we got to do, a few little round robins, around the local area, which, again, I'm sure today you wouldn't be able to do that without about a mile of paperwork. But that was probably my first experience. And then later in high school, my dad took me out to the airport again to do some flying lessons.
Well, that's how it all started.
It was fun.
I love those stories. Those stories that connect dads to their sons, and
Yeah.
I think it's a great lesson for lots of dads and lots of sons.
It is.
The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops chartered the flight through American Airlines.
They did.
Tell me a little bit about the plane, and is it different from regular scheduled planes, or I'm sure I'm laughing because I can't picture the Pope buying a ticket.
Yeah, you can't imagine him in line, can you? The airplane, it's very much, the airplane we see behind us, very much a regular airplane that everybody has the opportunity to visit. And I think we'll put a plaque on the airplane indicating that Pope Francis flew in this particular airplane, 7 Alpha Golf. And
So that plaque will be on the plane for...
yes, when you go into the forward door on the left, the plaque will be on the airplane forever.
So I could be going to take a flight someplace and be on the same plane?
So you could see it. Wow. You could see it.
Wow.
But the airplane was chartered, and what we did for His Holiness was basically three things. The papal emblem that you see on the side of the airplane, that was affixed there for His Holiness. A couple other things we did, very minor things. We put in stanchions for flags. If you look at the picture behind us, you can see the flags coming up. One's the Vatican flag, the other a United States flag. So we could put in a couple of simple stanchions so that would be supported.
Did they stay on when the plane's flying?
That would be fun, but we actually took them apart
okay.
and put them back in, closed the windows. Kind of messes up my hair a little bit. So that was taken care of that way. And then we modified the PA system in the back of the aircraft so that His Holiness could speak to the media if he wanted to. And during the trip from Philadelphia to Rome, he took the opportunity to speak with the media at some length, and it got him the opportunity to be mobile around the aircraft. So other than that, and then making sure everything is pretty spotless and in good mechanical order, it's very much the same type airplane that anybody on American Airlines that flies a Boeing 777.
So you didn't take out any seats or anything like that, or?
No, it was lock, stock, and barrel, pretty much. It was back in service the next day. From the papal trip, it went right back into service.
Now, when you have a slot, like it's called Shepherd 1,
Yes.
Tell me about,
So the really neat thing is, I think most people know that when the president flies, the aircraft that he's on is called Air Force One.
Right.
And the neat thing about His Holiness is when he's on an airplane or a helicopter or something, the aircraft is designated Shepherd One. And so that's always, it's pure joy to be able to speak those words because you know that someone very special is
now,
on board
is that
with
true
you.
with all nations or countries, that if he flies that airplane, say in Italy, it's in their language, it would be Shepherd One?
Right, correct. So if he's on Alitalia or whomever, they typically charter from the country, the host country they're going to. So in America, they charter on American Airlines, and we received permission from the FAA to designate the aircraft. For that 5-day period that we carried His Holiness, we designated that aircraft as Shepherd One. So, yeah.
Now, Tom, you're a dear friend of mine, and I think the world of you and Donna and your family. So I would pick you to fly me any place.
Thank you.
But
It'd be nice to have you.
how did you get picked to? Was it your background, your experience? How does someone like yourself get chosen, or anyone else, the other pilots or whatever you call them?
Well, I think somewhat the right place at the right time. Unfortunately, one of my friends, dear friends, was ill and not able to go on the flight. He's one of our very senior pilots, and it was sort of a special opportunity for him to fly, but due to illness, he wasn't able to go. And so I think because, two things. One, I'm an instructor on the Boeing 777 American. I help new pilots transition and gain experience on the new airplane. And two, I think some people at management at American understood my Catholic faith and the opportunity that we share with our community in doing things, volunteer efforts with the Catholic community. So between my professional experience and my Catholic faith, and one little thing that's written into the charter, maybe not a lot of people know, is that the captain, at least one of the people on the flight deck, primarily the captain, needs to be Catholic for the charter. So all in all, I think it was just a combination of a bunch of little things. So
That's listen. That's you're saying that very humbly. But I also, I also say that you're a beautiful guy, and it's nice to share your Catholic faith in the way you do it, Tom. You're a beautiful guy. So you didn't apply, like you didn't kind of say, well, I think I'll put my name, and they pull out of a hat.
Well, yeah, many people. I think there's probably 1,000 pilots at American that probably could have flown the trip also.
Yeah.
I'm just humble and happy to have been fortunate and been in the right place at the right time to be chosen for the flight.
Now, did you and the crew did you have to do anything special, or did you have to prepare anything, or did you sit down and say, hey, the Pope's coming? This is
Well, it's funny. I did hear about my assignment about 2 months ahead of time, and I'll tell you, every waking moment that I had that wasn't occupied with something, where I was thinking about the papal flight, I did two things, a few different things that I thought was pretty interesting. I put together an operations guide for the pilots and for myself on a PDF file on an iPad. I brought with me, I wanted to bring everybody from St. Paul's and Notre Dame and the greater Catholic community, but they won't fit on the airplane. So what I did instead was I brought flags from St. Paul's and Notre Dame and Seton Hall University and my alma mater. So that I could, have them mounted and then donated back to St. Paul's and Notre Dame and all that. One thing I thought was special, it's sort of tradition that you give His Holiness a gift. And, what do you give the guy who wants nothing, who has everything, and who the world adores? What do you give a guy like that? And so, most things just didn't even make the grade. So what I decided was I would create a patch. And I think it had a lot of meaning. It has a lot of meaning for me. Love is Our Mission is the patch that is the Vatican's logo for the trip, His Holiness trip to the United States. So that was their logo around. I put the names of the 4 pilots, including my own, that were privileged to be on the trip. On the bottom, I put Shepherd 1, the name of the aircraft. And I'm not even going to try the Latin words on the bottom, but the Latin words on the bottom are the papal motto. And the papal motto means humble but chosen. So to His Holiness, I explained that we were humbled to be chosen to be pilots on the cruise. So I'll leave that for you as a special gift.
You know, when you were saying that, I was actually going through my mind saying that I'm sure it's with the other pilots too, but it certainly fits you. You know,
Oh,
humble
okay.
but chosen, and that's the Holy Father is that's his whole personification. You know, I mean,
Right.
it's every place that as a priest, I even go talk to her. Even today, I was doing some chaplaincy work at a hospital, and somebody at the hospital said to me, he said, "Isn't that Holy Father just the greatest?" I mean, he just comes across as bringing a lot of love of God and Christ and the Blessed Mother. How about the destinations? The Pope, how did you fly him, or what destinations did he actually use? American Airlines.
Yeah, so he spent several days in Cuba before he came to the United States, and he flew Alitalia up to the United States. And, excuse me, we started in Dallas and took our Boeing 777 and brought it up to Andrews Air Force Base, where we picked up His Holiness, Pope Francis, and we flew them up to New York, where he got on Air Force One's helicopters and was transported downtown. We had a layover there. The next day we came back, took His Holiness from New York to Philadelphia, a very short flight. Had the honor of having His Holiness request a quick visit in the cockpit with us, so we got to see him for a few moments. Landed in Philly, we had a 30-hour break or so, and then the big thing was bringing His Holiness from Philadelphia back home to Rome, and that was unbelievable.
Now, Tom, when you were with him, did you get to go to any of the events, or do you have to stay with the plane, or what's the protocol for that?
You know, it would have been lovely to go to any of the events, and in fact, many of the events I watched on TV. When he spoke at the seminary in Philadelphia, I thought that was perhaps the best speech of his entire visit. But, you know, we spent a lot of time with our books and reviewing some of the things that we were going to have to do and make sure the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed.
You're working.
We were working, so.
A lot of people travel with the Pope. I mean, first of all, let me ask you, how many seats are on a 777?
You know, the largest 77, the Boeing 777-300 that we have seats 310 people. Okay. So literally hundreds of people can attend. We had a large crew from American pilots, flight attendants, security, maintenance people. Plus we carried security, U.S. security, and we carried a large contingent of media personnel. So quite a few people. I was, you know, really surprised how many and what variety of people that we carried on the flight.
Did it change from place to place?
It varied, yeah. Yeah, it varied. On the American Airlines side, it pretty much stayed the same. We had the same numbers of people and things like that, but you know, it did vary the number of media we had and the number of security and types of security and who and what. So
I have to ask you this: is it when the Holy Father travels with somebody like that? Is it similar to the way we travel? I mean, does he have to take his shoes off and go through a little camera or something? Or?
Well, he gets a lot of latitude. You know, he can pretty much sit where he likes.
Yeah.
And but you know, he was extremely gracious man.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, he.
You can just see it in his whole face. It's just. When he smiles, he really smiles. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
his whole body smiles.
He was the man you see on TV.
How about the other folks that were traveling with him?
Yeah.
Did they go through? I mean, security and all. I mean, they must have some way of knowing who's getting on that airplane and who's not.
You know, they did, and before the trip, anybody who was on the airplane had to be credentialed by the Secret Service. And one funny little story, and it's a collision story, so you might like it. But we. I had 2 bags with me when we were leaving, and before we got on the flight, the people that are very much responsible for the security of flight wind up inspecting all our bags and all this. So when we were in Philadelphia coming back, we all had to line up our bags, and they were subject to inspection and all that. And while those were being inspected and looked at, I was speaking to one of the senior security people, and the gentleman who was going down our bag said, "Whose bag is this?" And he's pointing to my black Purdue bag, and I'm like, I'm thinking I'm going to be taken off the airplane, the trip, the whole 9 yards. Nobody at church is going to talk to me. I'm going to get fired at American. The whole thing. And I just, I closed my eyes and I put my hand up in the air and I'm like, it's my bag. He looks at me and he goes, "Go Boilers." And I was just like, I was stunned. And I'm like, "Go Boilers." Because I thought, for sure that was it,
That to me, Tom, is just the humor of God.
Yeah.
It's just, that's a great story.
Yeah.
There might have been someone else there that would say, "What do you mean go Boilers?"
Yeah.
What about Notre Dame? Or what
Right,
about,
exactly.
Did you get to spend any time with the Holy Father at all?
Besides his
Get to
short,
speak to him?
yeah, besides his short little visit in the cockpit, we got to say a few words. When we were going from Philadelphia to Rome, we were able to have everyone was granted a private audience with His Holiness Pope Francis. So we were able to sit and, have a few minutes with His Holiness, just one-on-one and very nice. A very, very nice little conversation. So it was unbelievable. So.
Give me a little bit of an experience of it. The Holy Father said,
Well,
"Hi, I'm Pope Francis. What's your name?"
Well, it was interesting. I sat down and I was extremely emotional. And I think he sensed that I was somewhat more than excited to be there. And,
Sure.
And so he placed his hands on mine, and I was, I was
Wow.
just taken and trying to hold my emotions together. And we just talked about the Diocese of Trenton, Bishop O'Connell, and the people we know at St. Paul's. Everyone's sending their greetings, looking forward to the Year of Mercy.
Yes.
And and then I explained to him. I had this patch for him and what it meant, and he graciously accepted it. And I think the biggest thing, probably my most memorable part of the trip was Donna and I's wedding anniversary. Our 26th wedding anniversary was a couple days after, and so I had gotten a memento for our anniversary. It was a olive wood rosary that I had purchased from the Bethlehem area. And so I explained to His Holiness that it was my wedding anniversary in a couple days, and before I could even finish, he took the rosary and cupped it in his hands, closed his eyes, and said a prayer, and graciously gave it back to me. So that was just, a really, really neat part. And then the best part was a couple days later, during my actual anniversary, we went out to dinner, and I got to explain the whole thing to my wife, and so it was really, really special. So that was quite an experience.
I almost wish Donna was with us. That had to be.
Yeah, it was quite a moment.
Yeah.
So quite a moment.
That's I guess that's the real vocation, Tom. That you have with Donna, and Donna with yourself, and it just allows moments like that to be so precious.
Yeah.
Because it sums up all the laughter, the tears, the raising children, and
Right.
and realizing that's the covenant of God.
Right.
That's when God says, "I'll be your father, you're going to be my kids," and you say that to each other, and you say that to your children, and someone like the Holy Father just just to be able to put your hands in his hands, and
Right,
every time you say that rosary, wow,
right. We're
Wow.
all there, all three of us.
really, really, really blessed for you. The flight crew, you know, on the trip back to Rome, received an audience with the Holy Father. Is that what you were talking about just now? Or
Right.
is that
Yeah,
did
so
they-
everyone,
did
everyone
they-
got a few minutes.
Okay. Anybody else have any kind of stories that they told you? You must have been in the cockpit talking to each other later on.
Yeah, I think everybody else had, from some of the pictures I saw afterwards, everyone had various responses to, it's probably for me a lifelong, desire to meet His Holiness. And last year we had actually gone to Rome, and I'd seen him give the Angelus in St. Peter's Square.
Yeah.
And we were about 1,000 feet away. And I thought, wow, I said 1,000 feet away, this is probably as close as I'll ever get to His Holiness, Pope Francis. And that's okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. And little did I know that, less than a year later, I would be, in the same space, closer than we're sitting right now, within inches of Pope Francis.
And
So
when you got to Rome, and you landed, was there anything happening there? I mean,
it was, really amazing. Before we landed, I had asked the Vatican if they wouldn't mind hosting us for a tour of the Vatican, and then
you mean the flight crew?
yes, for some of the flight crew regrettably had to go home, but there was a bunch of us that were staying, and so when we landed in Rome, we sort of got to the where we were parking the airplane, and we shut the engines down. And when we shut the engines down, really the whole trip, months of planning, the 5 days of working, is sort of all sort of washed off me, and I sort of felt, at peace, and I thought pretty much we were pretty done. Little did I know that His Holiness was, when we opened up the cockpit door, His Holiness was standing there just to say goodbye to us and thank us
Wow.
for our service and all that. So that was just like, you stay up most of the night flying across the ocean, and you're pretty spent, and then spent after a really wonderful trip. And then as a last little surprise, His Holiness takes a moment just to say thank you. And so that was, really, really amazing. So,
John, you knew you were going to be the pilot a couple of months ahead of time.
right.
You've flown lots of places, military, and you've been honored in many ways for all of that. What the difference? I mean, could I ask you this?
Sure.
A couple of months before time, was that part of your prayer? Like, hey Lord, please fly with us, help us to be safe, help everything to go. And when that plane lands, it's like when the final exam is over. It's kind of like,
Right. Well, somebody asked me if this trip was going to be, the highlight of my professional life, and I said no.
Yeah.
I said, I've flown the last two sitting secretaries of the UN. I've flown support for George Bush, the first George Bush, and it's a complicated trip for sure. There are a lot of moving parts and a lot of different people, but professionally, it wasn't, a huge deal, although it was very much a lot of work. But personally, it was a lifetime desire to do something, it was a lifetime desire to just meet His Holiness. And to be of some professional use to His Holiness was just beyond thought. I mean, just the concept that I could personally do something professionally for the Vatican or His Holiness was just beyond. I mean, it wasn't until we were in Andrews, this whole thing during the planning stages just seemed surreal because, the idea of me being on an airplane with the Pope just didn't seem like it should be right, So it wasn't until at Andrews we saw the motorcade coming to us. They circled around the aircraft, and His Holiness started up the steps. And when he started up the steps, I'm like, holy moly, we're flying the Pope,
Yeah.
and this is totally real.
Tom, with something like the Holy Father or the people that you just mentioned, is it different than a regular flight? Meaning, I guess I'm trying to figure that, like at an airport, would the crowds be different, or would they be? I mean, I've flown a lot. You know, you
Right.
look out the window and there's a plane here on the runway, and a plane there on the runway, and you know, I mean, do they clear a whole big section, or is it just the same as?
Yeah, it's just
Whatever else.
it's a little more special. They do what's called a ramp freeze. And then at commercial airports, that's in military fields, and at commercial airports, a little bit different. So, for example, 5 minutes before we left Andrews, they instituted a ramp freeze. Nothing on the airport moves except us. And that's really,
what ramp freeze means.
that's what ramp freeze means. And that was really special to know you're on an airport and nobody else is moving. And then at different places, it was funny. Another story is we were at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York, and we are taxiing out, and it was a very, very short taxi from where we were to where we were taking off. In fact, that's a picture of us landing in New York. One of the things you need is a little piece of paper with some data on it, and it verifies your takeoff performance and all that. And so there was a very, very long line of aircraft waiting for takeoff, and they knew that they were waiting for us to take off first. And so we had to wait. We waited maybe 30 extra seconds for this very important piece of paper to come up on our printer. And so I said, you know, we're going to have to wait here a minute. And then Tower said, okay, yes, no problem. Somebody on the radio said they're waiting for their, we call it a closeout. And they said, well, they're waiting for the closeout. And then within, you know how pilots are, within like 2 seconds, somebody goes, that's okay, you've got the Pope with you, just go ahead, it's not a problem. And I was like, oh, no, it's a problem. So,
The experience. I know you're a good man and a spiritual man. Has it done anything else to your spiritual life and in going to church or in your prayers?
well, you know, I think, you know, my wife Donna and the kids were all very
Sure.
active in our Catholic community. You know, it was really neat coming back and sharing with our St. Paul's community, Notre Dame community, and the various ministries of the Diocese of Trenton that we're involved in. It was very, people were very interested in sharing the experience.
Tom,
So,
it's a story of a
phenomenal.
lifetime, and I'm so grateful to share it with you and sharing with me. And is this for myself? This
that's
is my
for
gift?
you.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely.
The Catholic Corner, bless you, bless you. Just keep our prayers together and know we love each other. Thanks, Tom.